Well, hello, and welcome to episode 213 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, a couple weeks ago, we lost one of the living legends in film history, especially, of times that you and I have been, growing up with movies, right? Going back to Top Gun, to Batman Forever, to Tombstone. Today, we're going to be talking about Val Kilmer, and we wanted to talk about one of his most seminal roles, maybe his best role, but maybe not the one that always gets associated when you think of Val Kilmer right away. Today we're going to be talking about The Doors, and this is a Val Kilmer, masterclass as much as it is a look at the life of Jim Morrison.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because we were when he passed, you and I had talked about what we would do to pay homage to him, and we were thinking of all the films. And if you haven't yet seen the documentary that he created, um,
Val, yeah.
I know you have, but I'm telling the listeners.
Mhm.
I mean, I urge you to go look at that because even if you weren't a huge Val Kilmer fan, as it were, his like book of work is pretty amazing. I mean, he's done everything from Batman to, working with Marlon Brando, I mean he's done all like a ton of different stuff, and everyone has a favorite Val Kilmer movie. Generally, I think that people associate him with Tombstone, but we wanted to do something quite different here, and I really love that we did because The Doors, it's Oliver Stone. It's going to be a wild ride and definitely different than what I've been seeing as we kind of pay homage to this actor. I'm super excited to dig into it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get into the doors of all of it, but before we do that, we need to take a quick break so we can mix up this week's drink, who is going to pay homage to Val Kilmer, of course, but also to the late frontman of the Doors, Jim Morrison himself. So why don't we do this, Michaela? Let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So, Brian, I searched the internet for Val Kilmer's favorite drink, couldn't really find it. And then I searched
Mhm.
the internet for Jim Morrison's favorite drink. And there's a lot of drinking in The Doors, right? I think like in
I
the
think it
first
would be
20
every
minutes,
drink if you go by
right?
Oliver Stone's The Doors.
It's like everything. Was it alcoholic? Was it bad for you? He was injecting it into his eyeballs. Um, no, there's a scene where he is drinking like a bottle. I think it's like an old bottle of Chivas. I like took a screenshot and tried to find it, and of course it's from the 70s or whatever, or the 60s.
Hmm.
So the bottle's not the same, but I mean apparently he loved everything. But I did find this really fun tiki bar called the Lucky Tiki. It's in Los Angeles, and it made a tiki drink called the Ghost of Jim Morrison. And so that is what we're going to recreate today to the best of our ability.
Absolutely. Not only is the Lucky Tiki Bar making a Jim Morrison inspired cocktail, it's actually located in the Doors 1970 workshop and recording studio. It's like a speakeasy there. So, Michaela, next time we go, we're going to have to figure out how to make our way into there and have one of these tiki drinks for ourselves. And I'll, of course, drop a link to the Lucky Tiki Bar down in the show notes. You can go check them out if you're ever that way and let us know what you think about these. But yeah, we thought that this would be perfect, right? It's got its roots to the Doors. It's paying honor to Jim Morrison, which is nice as we're paying honor to Val Kilmer here in this episode. And, it sounded good. And it uses an ingredients that I think we've dabbled with a time or two here on Drink the Movies, but we've never really gotten into too much. So if you read the recipe for this, it's basically their house-made blackberry shrub and Kapali rum. So, what is a blackberry shrub? I guess we should probably start with that, Michaela. Like I said, we touched on that a little bit before, but a shrub, to my general knowledge, is just kind of like this vinegar based drink, right? And it's super old. It has its roots like in colonial America as a way to preserve things, right? You vinegar things or pickle things and things like that. And it got like this resurgence in like the early 2010s here in the States as like this low calorie kind of soda alternative and being used in cocktails and different things like that. But what about a shrub, Michaela? Are you familiar with those at all? Is a shrub your
Yeah.
jam? You don't really like
Mm.
vinegary things that much, so.
Yeah, vinegar reminds me of salad dressing or something else entirely gross, and I won't repeat it here. But I will say that um, I coming to the South, right, from Texas, and some people will say Texas is further south. That's not the point. When I came to the Carolinas, elderberry shrub and elderberry syrup were like the things in cold and winter season, and I did not understand why. Um, it did not sound good to me. But apparently, like that is a huge medicinal kind of thing that people do. You can go buy a shrub. You can certainly make one. I was traveling and I was not able to make it myself, so I bought some from Tucci. It's like Stanley Tucci, but it's M apostrophe Tucci. You can buy these. It's not that expensive. It's non-alcoholic. But yeah, you make it with like by infusing whatever berry or fruit you want in some vinegar and sugar until it becomes like a syrup, and then you keep it for a while. It looked very, I don't know, it seems it seems like if you were going to make cough syrup on your own, this is what it would be.
There you go. Yeah, you sell it out of a bottle, out of an old timey like horse and cart for sure. But yeah, a shrub is good. I like vinegary tasting things, and don't think of it as much as like a white vinegar. Think of it more of like a fruited like balsamic vinegar. That's more of the notes I
That's
get
true.
out of it, which is pretty good. And you can drink it, as you said, Michaela. It's non-alcoholic, so you can just mix it with some soda water and turn it into like a super low calorie, pretty healthy soda alternative. Kombucha is super popular now, so you can certainly do this, and obviously you can play around with it in your cocktails. And here in this tiki drink, I thought that was really interesting. I've never really seen like a shrub being used in a tiki drink. You mentioned the one that you had. I got one from 1821, which is like a cocktail ingredients. They make bitters and shrubs and stuff like that out of Atlanta, Georgia. And theirs was a blackberry peppercorn shrub, and I thought that that sounded particularly good because I thought that the peppercorn was going to pair nicely with kind of those sweeter sugarcane notes coming from the rum. Now let's address the Kapali rum, the other ingredient here. There's only two that are listed on the menu there. So the Kapali rum, it looks to be a nice high quality premium rum. It is an aged rum, and it comes out of Belize, I believe. So I wasn't able to track that bottle down. So what I used was a Ron Izalco 10-year rum, which is a blend of Central American rums. I figured, maybe that has some Belize rum in there, also being from Central America. So I thought that that was going to be pretty close in my book. So what I did was I got my cup. I filled it up with some crushed ice, and I put in 2 ounces of my shrub and 2 ounces of my aged rum. Made sure I got that stirred up pretty good, and then I garnished it with a rosemary stem that I lit on fire and let smoke up my kitchen. Right, it smelled awesome. It pays tribute to Jim Morrison, which is great. And then I sipped through a straw and mostly enjoyed. I thought it was a little vinegary off the bat, but how'd you put yours together? And then we can talk about the way that these tasted.
So I made this two ways, to be honest. I did this twice. The first time I did it, I used like a white rum, and then you had sent me a picture of, hey, can you find this rum um anywhere? And I went and looked and I couldn't find it. But what I did do was came back and I used this Muddy River Distillery has an aged rum. It's in the Carolinas. It's very good. So I that's what I used the second time, and I have to say that that was the way to go. I wouldn't recommend this with white rum. Um,
Yep.
I I also took the liberty of having a safety moment here. If you're going to set anything on fire, do that in a safe space. Don't burn down your house. It's not our fault. But I will say the secret to having the effect I think that is warranted on the rosemary is to not is to have it a little bit dried out. So what we did was I had a sprig of rosemary. I left it out kind of on the side overnight, so it got just a little drier. Rather than if you're going to pick it fresh or you're going to buy it directly from the grocery store, it's going to still sit on fire if you burn it enough, but it will then just be like really smoky, and it's not going to have like the notes of kind of charred rosemary that you're going to want to infuse with the drink. So just a safety trick there. I really didn't like this the first sip. And I did not like it with the white rum. I definitely think if you're going to do this, do it with an aged rum. I wouldn't necessarily do it
Yeah.
with a spicy rum, like a spiced rum, because that's going to muddle everything. But yeah, that very first sip is incredibly kind of vinegary to me. But as you sip it more, like that kind of mellows out, you get this really interesting kind of brightness. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but from
Yeah.
the like the melding of this rosemary that's got that herbalness, but then the medicinalness of of the shrub itself, and then the richness of the blackberry. It was awfully sweet for me. I don't know how yours was. I mean, I did it exactly the way you did in terms of parts. I used equal parts, but I thought that this was still pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a little bit vinegar forward kind of on my first initial sip. And But by the time I finished drinking it and it had a little bit of time to melt some of that ice, and kind of diluted that out a little bit, I thought that this was like incredible. It was still kind of a lot to drink. I think that 4 ounces of this drink was a little bit more than I would have wanted. But I think up front, if I was making this again, what I would have done is I was thinking last night as I was having it that I would have thrown in just, I don't know, like a bar spoon or so worth of water just to kind of speed up that dilution process
Mm.
a little bit. Or I would have added, say, a half ounce of something like a pineapple juice, which is going to give it a little bit, more kind of sweetness. And pineapple's not super like citrusy or acidic, so it's not going to, really amp up the flavors of the vinegar, even more so than like, some lemon juice or something like that would. But I thought that that would pair really nicely, give it a little bit more of a tropical bit to it. And they're making, their own shrub there, the Lucky Tiki. So it's hard to say exactly what they might have put into it. It could have other fruit flavors infused in there as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I thought that that would be really excellent. So, still the equal parts, but then just maybe, spike it with a half ounce or so of like a pineapple juice would be good, or
Hmm. Yeah.
like a nectarine juice. I'm thinking of something, that's citrusy, but softer, and less acidic than something else. But yeah, I thought this was really good. It felt very inspired, very creative, and it was very different than things that we've had in the past, and even tiki drinks that I've had in the past. So I thought that that was pretty good.
Yeah, I have to say, I really kind of want to play around with more shrubbery uh now that because I think that if it had been even like a tartness, like a strawberry rhubarb shrub would be really good with like a dark rum. I think that that would have been that would be something to play with. I don't know, it opens up all the doors. Opens up all the doors. Yeah,
Well,
see what I
there,
did there?
there you
Yeah.
go. I do see. I do see. All right. Well, that's going to close this door on the cocktail section for sure. So let's do this, Michaela. We've got enough shrub now to make up about 100 of these, so we might as well get started on them. So let's mix up another Ghost of Jim Morrison. Special shout again to the Lucky Tiki in Los Angeles. Let us know if you ever make it out that way, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, The Doors.
I go out on stage and howl for people. Me, they see exactly what they want to see. Some say Lizard King, whatever that means. Or some black-clad leather demon, whatever that means. But really, I think of myself as a sensitive, intelligent human being, but with the soul of a clown that always forces me to blow it at the most crucial moments.
Spoiler warning for The Doors. If you've not yet seen this film, we're going to talk about all the things and whether or not maybe we understood all the things. Yes. But if you've not yet seen it and you don't want things to be spoiled for you, I suggest you press pause. You go make yourself a Ghost of Jim Morrison because that is delicious. Then you should go watch the film, come back, and let us chat about all things The Doors.
Absolutely. And if you haven't seen The Doors, you've had plenty of time to do so, but you might be want to go back and revisit Val Kilmer's filmography. So, if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and hit pause on this. Go check it out. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and then come back to us. It's shorter than JFK, I think, right? So that's good. That's good. This was released in 1991. It was directed by Oliver Stone, and it stars Val Kilmer, of course, as The Doors frontman Jim Morrison. His bandmates, Ray Manzarek, John Densmore, and Robbie Krieger are played by Kyle MacLachlan, Kevin Dillon, and Frank Whalen, and his love, Pamela Corson, is played by Meg Ryan. So, Michaela, I mentioned it, I think, in the lobby bar episode, or maybe at the top of this. I don't really remember for sure because when you get into the Doors, your headspace gets all fuzzy. But I brought up the fact that everyone, like, it seems like maybe you didn't, maybe you don't have no idea what I'm talking about, but it seems like everyone who basically has been around since the late 60s goes through their The Doors phase.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did, but it was probably for a different reason than most people, because this was released in 1991. My parents were separated around that time, and so I went to my mom's house in the summer of either 1992 or 1993 probably 1993, because that's when this would have been released on like Showtime or HBO.
Hmm.
And there's a scene. There's a very adult scene. I mean, they're all kind of adult because there's a lot of drug usage, but there's a very adult scene where Jim Morrison like kind of has this a moment, if you will, with a witch who's like drinking blood, and there's candles everywhere. There's a lot of nakedness, and I was entranced. And that was my Doors phase. After that, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Who was this guy? And did he drink blood? This is weird. I don't know. I'm enthralled. So probably not the same as most people, which is like, hey, there's this cool music that he also did. um, that's me for better or worse. But there you go. That was my Doors phase.
Well, most people, yeah, probably get into the poetry of Jim Morrison or to the to the songs or the song structure of the Doors. You start, when you're around 20 years old, you start to get really introspective and think that you understand the world completely, or you don't understand the world at all, and you find some solace in the Doors. But yeah, maybe a bloodletting ceremony is how you do it there, Michaela, as someone who's probably too young to have been seeing the Doors, to be quite honest. But that's okay. That's okay. We're going to go the film basically is kind of a biopic. One of the things that you'll notice straight away if you watch The Doors, and maybe not straight away, you'll definitely notice it by the end. This film is called The Doors, but it's barely about the Doors. This is should have been called Jim Morrison because that's really what the film is about. It starts with him as kind of a young kid who I guess is getting kind of like this imprint of this traffic accident that he's seeing driving through the desert, and then it kind of goes through Jim Morrison's very short-lived life, right? Dying at the age of 27, but it kind of goes through his journey through film school with, falling in love with Pamela Corson to, starting the band and kind of going through there. And, it doesn't even really like tackle the highs of the band too much. It's mostly just the lows of Jim Morrison's aspect of being in the band. And yeah, then, kind of goes through all of that, his trials and tribulations until his death. And then, kind of ends at the cemetery there in Paris where he is buried today. So that's more or less what the film is about. So what I thought we could do, Michaela, is let's just tackle, I guess, kind of the players here in this. And we have to start, of course, with Val Kilmer, who is playing Jim Morrison. Now, at the time, let's see, Val Kilmer, this would have been 1991, so he would have, done some things for sure up to this point. He had been, Mad Mardigan in Willow, of course,
Mm.
at this point. But, kind of what he's most known for, Tombstone, I don't think had come out yet. So, this was really like his first, like, I guess, grasp at playing a true leading man, right? Top Gun had come out, but he was playing, more or less, not to put it too lightly, but second fiddle to Tom Cruise there in this. But this one, not only is the front man of this film, he is, one of the most influential and popular frontmen of them all, Jim Morrison. And Val
Oh,
Kilmer is amazing.
he's incredible. There is a legend that I have read multiple times. I'm going to say it's a legend because I don't really know if it's true, but there's a legend that um, Val Kilmer really wanted this role, and so he went to a recording studio in San Francisco, somewhere in California, and he recorded a bunch of music as Jim Morrison, and then he showcased it to the living band members, and was like, "Who is this? Is this Jim or is this me?" And nobody could tell, and including Oliver Stone. And so that's one of the reasons why he got this film credit, and they took a chance on him. I think that this should have been like the door opener. See what I did there
Hmm.
for Val
Hmm. Hmm.
Kilmer, because he was, thought of. I mean, look, this is the guy from Top Secret, which is just a complete like satire kind of farce around being a spy, right? Like, I mean, that's how it started, and then he did Real Genius, not that much different. Then he did Top Gun a little bit. Willow was just a lot of fun, right? But it wasn't it wasn't necessarily going to ever be known for its acting chops of any character in that film. And no hate on it because I love that movie, but this was something completely different. And in the opening sequence, when Oliver Stone's shot of we start at his feet, and we're in California in 1965, and we go up to his face and where he's walking to this party. Um, it's a complete transformation, and I think that that's one of the reasons why we decided to do this film rather than so many others is because this movie would not be the same if it had been anybody else in that role. You can't have this movie without Val Kilmer being the this Jim Morrison, you know?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because undoubtedly, at least in my eyes, that there is really one kind of bright spot of this film, and that is Val Kilmer playing Jim Morrison here in this. And I heard it described, kind of in, right after Val Kilmer had passed, and people were talking about him online and stuff. And I saw someone kind of describe Val Kilmer in this way, and I think that it is pretty apt and definitely, kind of grabs his role here as Jim Morrison. But it said that Val Kilmer had the looks of a leading man, and like the chameleon acting abilities of like a character actor because he could fall in and out of these characters, right? And I think that that's true, right? He is an extremely talented actor and could do all these things, right? Went from Willow to The Doors to Doc Holliday there in Tombstone to being Batman to going on to being Heat, all of these things. So that he did. His portrayal, I think, is excellent. Val Kilmer does, I think, all of the singing within the film. It's not his singing on the soundtrack; that is actual just recordings of the Doors. But that is really pretty impressive because a large part of the film is showing kind of these various performances. The musical performances of the Doors. They're Whiskey a Go Go, kind of going through to like the Ed Sullivan Show and stuff like that. So you're seeing a lot of him on stage and leading the way. And like I said, really the bright spot for me, one of the brightest of the bright spots, for sure. Let's talk about his love interest a little bit here, Michaela. Pamela Corson is played by Meg Ryan. I guess you could say that this is maybe like, I don't know if it is or not. Of the films that I'm familiar with, this is her most like dramatic role that I can remember. Meg Ryan being in. Of
Yeah.
course, this is. I guess it's like it's definitely not a romantic comedy, which is what you associate Meg Ryan with. But it's kind of like this romantic tragedy, maybe in a way. And I think that Meg Ryan does a pretty good job in this. You can see like she was always kind of having to like. It felt to me like she was having to like reach to like get to the levels that this character Pamela Corson, required her to get to. And sometimes she grabbed it. Sometimes it was a little bit flatter for me. But what do you think about Meg Ryan here playing Pamela Corson?
I was really impressed considering that between this film, The Doors, she did Joe versus the Volcano and Prelude to a Kiss. Okay. Um, before this, she had just finished When Harry Met Sally a couple of years before. So she was like right in her sweet spot of being America's sweetheart. Everybody's going to fall in love with Meg Ryan kind of thing, right? This is right before her career completely skyrocketed in Sleepless in Seattle. I thought this was pretty good. I do feel uh, that she has kind of she pigeonholed herself a lot from a career perspective. She did a film called In the Cut um, in 2003 that I thought was her most serious role. And then I realized that she had been in this movie and I had seen this movie,
Mhm.
but I had forgotten it was her. And I think that that's really telling. I think she does a really good job of kind of trying to break away. I do feel what you're saying when you say that she's kind of reaching. But I believe that that was probably a metaphor. And perhaps exactly how the real Pamela Corson maybe was feeling trying to be connected to Jim. Because in this love story that you see unfold, he seems to pick her out of this crowd. He kind of culls her from a herd. He says, "You're the one." And then the rest of the time, she is just hanging on. I love the scene where they're very much together. It's like Thanksgiving and she's making a duck and she's mad at him because he took acid at the wrong time. And she's like, now we're not going to peak together. That was going to be the best part of my day because her whole reason for doing any of the things that she's doing is just to feel closer to Jim and his weirdness and his universe that no one really could understand. And everybody was just kind of living in this existence that really was all about Jim Morrison. I
Mhm.
thought that that was just perfect. Did it feel a little odd, a little bit? I mean, the first time I saw her, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that really is Meg Ryan." Um, but I liked it. I mean, I thought that it was. I don't know. It was better than I expected it to be. I thought I would feel differently about her performance, and I really did enjoy it.
Mhm. Yeah, and to that end, I suppose that it is, kind of her always playing catch up with Jim Morrison. Now there are some different takes on this and how accurate to the man of Jim Morrison
Fair.
this was, and then vice versa to how accurate of a portrayal of Pamela Corson it was as well, who was, I guess, family owned a lot of the rights to a lot of the poetry that was being used in the film. So, that aside, I think Meg Ryan does a pretty good job here in this film, playing alongside of Val Kilmer. And let's talk about the rest of the band here real quick. Michaela, so you've got Kevin Dillon playing John Densmore, you have Frank Whaley playing Robbie Krieger, and you have Kyle MacLachlan, the man on the keys, Ray Manzarek. Kyle MacLachlan is excellent as Ray Manzarek. His is really the only part of the story that we actually get. I couldn't tell you a single thing about John Densmore or Robbie Krieger from this film. Completely like blend in with the background sort of a thing. But yeah, Ray Manzarek there, played by Kyle MacLachlan. Paul Atreides himself does a really good job. He has kind of the most, I guess, relationship specifically with Jim Morrison, is going to film school with them, and they'll seem to kind of butt heads and have the most, I guess, kind of like artistic license that they're playing within the course of the band there, as being, I guess, the two more character aspects of the band. But I really liked Kyle MacLachlan in this. Again, I don't know the inner workings of the band, whether how accurate of a portrayal that was, but Kevin Dillon and Frank Whalen, very good actors, but like I said, like completely lost. Like I finished the film and I was like, I couldn't tell you anything about the rest of the band, which was why I was like, this movie should have been called Jim Morrison and not The Doors,
Right.
because it's not really about The Doors. It's really about Jim Morrison. But what do you think? What do you think about Kyle MacLachlan here playing Ray
Oh,
Manzarek, or the others? Did you take something else away from it that I did?
well, I did, but the only reason I did is because I'm a big fan of Kevin Dillon. He was in a movie called Immediate Family that I really loved as a kid, with Mary Stuart Masterson, and uh, Glenn Close is in it. James Woods was in it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's the guy from that film, and I had to go look him up and make sure it was him. Kevin Dillon plays the drummer John Densmore, and the one thing I want to say about this is we talk about scenes that stick with us, and we don't really know why. When they're getting on the plane and someone's videotaping them, okay,
Mhm.
you see Robbie Krieger is like, yeah, hey, hi. And then the keyboardist, right, played by Kyle MacLachlan, is like, Ray Manzarek, 22, keyboardist, right? He's just like really into it. He knows he's going places. John Densmore is like, I'm the drummer and I'm 22, and this is like the farthest, outest thing ever. Wow. And then, and so it was kind of like these symbolisms of their personality kind of in this moment. And that's all we get, really. And they're all like more and more angry and frustrated with the fact that Jim keeps breaking all the rules. He refuses to like play the game of making money on the road, which is different than being like an artiste.
Mhm.
Certainly different than being a poet who's just really high all the time, looking to get further and further out, which is also really different than being this Lizard King personality that he already was. So other than that, that's what you get. It seemed okay until you think about this as in the context of it being like real, because I am sure that all of those band members had their own takes on what was going on and what their feelings and thoughts were. And you're right. I mean, all of that just kind of gets washed away in these mini concerts where we see Jim Morrison just completely unravel over
Yeah.
and over and over again.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the concerts here, Michaela, because you do get, I guess, kind of at the start, one of like the more endearing parts of the film is when you have Ray Manzarek and Jim Morrison having kind of this conversation, and they're talking about the poetry that Jim had written and things that, kind of his like overcoming like his shyness to get up there and perform like that. That is kind of interesting and endearing. I wish that it would have, explored that a little bit more than just it's like I'm shy. Okay, now all of a sudden they're performing these big things, and you get a couple of instances where they're doing that and building their following a little bit. Again, that part is pretty thin, and then we get into the more explosive things, right? So I guess kind of the big deal at the time is you get to Whiskey a Go Go, which is a very famous rock and roll club bar thing in Los Angeles. Like that was the dream to get to Whiskey a Go Go and perform. They do. It goes poorly because Jim Morrison was a very ignitative figure, and his poetry was very I don't know, like very much like well ahead of its time for sure, right? Is not, seceding to the censorship like ideals of the day. So you have kind of that explosive performance, and then they go into the Ed Sullivan show, same kind of a thing. I did like kind of the way of they're showing the back room, I guess, in preparation
Mm.
for the Ed Sullivan show. I liked that. I thought that that was interesting and how like out of touch Ed Sullivan was with the Doors. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought that that was an interesting portrayal of that. And then, it kind of goes on to then, kind of this penultimate, kind of explosive performance that they do in Florida, which lands Jim Morrison, into being arrested and basically having to flee the country to go to France to avoid having to serve jail for a long time. But I guess of like those three like main kind of concert performances we get, are there any of those that stand out to you, or you thought were really good, or vice versa, or what are your thoughts there on the musical aspects of the film?
I mean, I thought that it felt like it kind of felt like one long concert in this kind of this middle section of the film. And I think it was meant to. I really thought that because I again on purpose kind of forgotten what the truth was. And so I felt like I was watching this story really unfold for me the first time. So when they get to Whiskey a Go Go, everything's going really well at first. The music is good. People seem entranced. There's a bunch of people that you find out later are like agents watching, right? And it isn't until Jim kind of turns around, faces the crowd, and starts to go off script, as it were, in his poetry that people start really losing it. And you feel as an audience member, hey, this is going to be okay. Like I mean, this is going to be all right. Because people see him, agents are like, hey, you're gonna go make a ton of money. There's tons. This is everybody's loving what you're doing. You gotta rein it in a little bit. By the time they get to Florida, where he does or does not expose himself and get, all of that, you're kind of just watching a train wreck, but you can't stop. Because it's so good, and and I think maybe a case could be made that you need to be maybe as high as a kite to really get all the esotericness out of this. I was not. I was a very good girl, but I will say that by the end of this, you're just, I don't know, the music kind of infuses with this feeling of like, I don't know, watch like watching a train wreck, but it's a train wreck that you care about because at this point, you're just watching this person kind of implode themselves. And, this is after, Jim has had a uh, hugely mega conflict with his Pamela. So his love is like all over the place. He's having this really weird affair with this journalist who's also trying to help him, but the band is really frustrated. So by the end, you're just like, oh my gosh, dude, make a better choice. And it's hard. It's almost painful and embarrassing, even though you're watching it as an audience member. It's not really hurting you, but it feels like it's affecting you. And I think that that's really good. Oliver Stone did a really good job of doing that because it very easily could have been like, here's a story of someone that you barely know. But by the time you get to Florida and you get to that point, you feel like it's super unjust that he's going through court and it's totally unfair. It's really
Yeah.
weird.
Now, see, I also, I feel like it's unjust and unfair, but I think that's because I'm going into it as, a fan of The Doors and of
Mm,
Jim Morrison. I don't think that the film did anything to make me feel that way.
mm, okay.
Really, like, I think it was more of like the outside influence of it. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like it kind of showed all these things, and I guess you could say that it showed the evolution of Jim Morrison kind of throughout this thing a little bit, but there was like next to like no nuance to it at all. Like it was very much like very sledgehammery and kind of the way that it was telling this, right? Like there was not a scene in which, Jim Morrison was not just high and volatile, right? They're like from like 30 minutes into the film, like that was all you got. And that's not to take anything from away from Val Kilmer because he's absolutely incredible at portraying this. But I thought that, you know, like I said, there was like a complete lack of nuance to the film, which I thought was kind of surprising. And I'd never seen this film until I just watched it last week, so I wasn't familiar with it. I'd never seen it before, so I didn't have like I guess, the perspective of seeing how I felt about it from watching it, as a youngster to watching it to today. So I don't know. It's that, and like I just was expecting a little bit more, and kind of telling the story. And it's fine that it was a story about Jim Morrison as opposed to being a story about the Doors, but it never really seemed to kind of like grasp on to like what the idea of Jim Morrison was, right? It was just a little bit more black and white, and I think I would have liked a little bit more nuance to explore. How do you get to the point of where you're taking your own life at the age of 27, like those demons and things. I don't think that it did that good of a job at that, to be honest. But um, what are your thoughts about that, or any other scenes in the movie? You already talked about the crazy wild romp that he has there with his
Yeah.
the journalist lady, which
Mm.
which I don't was kind of interesting. And there were some other more explosive things. He's hanging out of a window. He like locks Pamela in a closet and lights it on fire, which I don't know if that really actually happened or not. According to most of the things I read, it's not. But it's kind of interesting and kind of metaphorical, I guess, for their relationship if you want to look at it that way. But were there any other scenes or anything that you wanted to talk about, Michaela?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Look, Crispin Glover, he was, the Marty McFly's dad in Back to the Future. He makes an appearance as Andy Warhol. I thought that was interesting. Um, I don't know why that I was watching it and I was like, wait a minute, it's Crispin Glover, that's crazy. Um, I thought that I don't know why I want to talk about it, but I thought that that was interesting. Yeah, I think the other thing that I really loved, going back and rewatching certain scenes for the sake of the podcast, I really loved that first interaction that we see between Jim Morrison and um, what is his name? I'm trying to find it. I want to use it's Ray Manzarek, right? When they're on the beach and Jim is feeling kind of dejected with the whole film school thing, and Ray is like, "Hey, what are you gonna do?" And he says, "I've got this poetry, right?" And they're sitting on the beach, and he says, "They're kind of songs, but I don't know." And Jim just, Val Kilmer's version of this song just kind of emotes, and there's this connection piece. Really, when you think about that, moment, I mean, Jim Morrison was a poet and he didn't know what to do with all of that. And really, um, I think what the director was trying to do, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think we're meant to really just see that Jim Morrison is this kid who saw something very traumatic when he was a child, and how that ruminated in his brain. And during the time of the 60s, I mean, the poor guy probably didn't really have a chance, but at the time he was able to really spread that and affect people to this day, right? Because everybody, like you said, there's I just ran into a friend of mine's kid who's going through their Doors phase. He's like
Mm.
19 and he's like, "Oh my gosh, where have I been all my life? Listening to this stuff is amazing." And I'm like, "Dude, just wait. Here's a movie that you need to be like 21 to see." So you need to wait a couple of years, because don't be like me. But yeah, I really thought that that scene for me was kind of like the most iconic, which is
Mhm.
interesting because it wasn't when he did or did not expose himself. It wasn't when he was at Whiskey A Go Go. It wasn't a concert. It was just him singing these words to a friend on the beach and having them kind of connect over. And the look that goes over Ray's face as he's like, "Oh my gosh, who is this person even?" It was really really cool, and that's probably my favorite scene.
Yeah, for sure. That was certainly the highlight of the movie for myself as well, as I mentioned earlier. And unfortunately, it comes about 20 minutes into the film, so you're left with 2 hours more of this, which I don't know. Like, Val Kilmer aside, who is like astonishingly good in this, like I didn't take much else away from it, to be honest. I thought it was kind of dull. I don't know. I just did not connect with it on any sort of way, and maybe that is true, kind of across the board. The reviews for this are pretty pretty mixed at best, you could say for sure. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit here, and we can kind of wrap up, Michaela. But this movie did not perform very well at all. The budget, I think, was 32 million. It made 34 million dollars, and I want to know why that is. I'm very interested in this. Val Kilmer, who, you know, probably wasn't like a household name, but had certainly done, some big things, had been in Willow, had been in Top Gun. You have the director here, Oliver Stone, who had at this point directed Platoon and Wall Street and Born on the Fourth of July, had been nominated and/or won, the Oscars up to that point. So that seems really good. He also would, direct and win a bunch of Oscars for JFK, which came out the same year. I don't know. Why do you think this didn't latch on any better? Do you think it was just kind of the mixed reviews? What do you think, Michaela?
Well, I was trying to look and see what came out around the same time because I think back in the day, we got to remember this is in the 90s and films are really going to do well or not, depending on what kind of sister films are also released that
I mean,
day.
Kindergarten Cop was the like number one in the box office for like 5 months, I think, at the time that
Right.
this came out. And I mean, it's an R-rated film, so it's and movies didn't make $1 billion back then, but it just seemed like people didn't latch onto this. Like even if you ask people about Oliver Stone films, they're gonna rattle off a bunch before they get to the doors. And the same with Val Kilmer films, to that end. And why do you
Yeah.
think that is?
I don't know. I think it was a weird time to be making something, and Oliver Stone is famous for making kind of these historical dramas, right? Um, I think it was a weird time to be doing something that was going to be so charged with uh, drugs and substance abuse. And I say that because I remember watching this. And again, I was too young to watch this film. Let me be clear about that. Okay. But I watched this and I remember being like, yeah, other than the fact that it looks like he's having a real good time with a witch, drugs are bad. Okay. And so you miss the whole point of it because it was so heavily like entrenched in the abuse of substances and how it ended up kind of catapulting this band from greatness to exile in Paris. I don't know. I think it's weird too because this isn't that. I mean, this is not. It's not your favorite film, right? I get that, but this is
Mhm.
this isn't bad. This is. Um, but I do feel that we see that a lot where there are these biopics around a person that do not do as well. Like 43, I thought was going to be amazing. And that was about um, Jackie Robinson, and it didn't do nearly as well as I thought it should have, even though it was a perfectly competent movie. I don't know why this didn't happen. I haven't been able to find in my research what other films came out during this time, but I mean, this is definitely a more like paradigm shifting film than like Kindergarten Cop, right? Which, as you say, did really, really well that year. So
I don't know.
I don't
I don't know.
know.
I don't know. Kindergarten Cop's pretty awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I was like, man, like, because I had like all of the ingredients there for being something that people would have gravitated to for sure. The Doors being as beloved as they are, and Jim Morrison,
Mm.
being kind of the figurehead of that band for sure. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that it didn't. So, any other kind of takeaways on the Doors or on Val Kilmer in his filmography here before we sign off on this one, Michaela?
I will say that according to the documentary Val, he was very proud of this film, and he was really proud of the work that he was doing. Um, he talks a lot about different movies in that. He doesn't talk about all of them, but he kind of, talks about the different pieces. And I think what's interesting to me is Val Kilmer, and they gets a bad rap, I think, of being difficult to work with, of being really hard to reach. And motivate properly, as it were, from a director standpoint, right? But so was Jim Morrison, because they were just on different planes of existence of the art that they were trying to create. Val Kilmer did a lot more than acting. He was an artist. He sculpted. He did a bunch of really cool stuff, and so. I'm really glad that we're covering this film because I think that it pays homage in a very different way, because they're definitely not the same, but their genius is similar and probably was misunderstood for most of their lives, which is really sad, but also a really beautiful thing because now we have all these films to look at and learn from. And that's it. That's all I want to say.
There you go. Absolutely. So, if you're listening at home, let us know what your favorite Val Kilmer film of them all is. Let us know what you thought about The Doors, and let us know if you make up a Ghost of Jim Morrison cocktail to have along the way. If you want to see pictures of our cocktail or get episode recaps, links to the merchandise shop, Drink the Video Games, all that stuff can be found on our website. It is www.drinkthemovies.com. If you want to, keep up with us, see what we're doing, see what we're drinking on any given day, what we're watching, any of that stuff, you can check that stuff out on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. Go check out Patreon.com/Drink the Movies if you want bonus content. It's a really great way to support the podcast, and you get to do fun stuff like do hangouts and get bonus episodes and cocktail chats, all that stuff. Again, that is Patreon.com/Drink the Movies. And Michaela, they're going to want to stay tuned because we have a full slate of really fun movies coming out this year, especially a lot of new releases. Seems like the movie theater is back in full swing here this summer. So people are going to want to make sure they're following along with all of that we have going on. Where can people get subscribed to the pod?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are distributed and supported. We do 2 drops a week. So hit that subscribe button to not miss any of the Drink the Movies goodness. Also, be sure to check out Drink the Video Games. It is awesome, even if you're not a huge video game fan. I make an appearance, which is not the most important part, but it's kind of fun. The cocktails are good. But the history and all of the cool stuff about the video game stuff is really neat, and I really like it. So you should check that out as well. If you're really loving what you're hearing on Drink the Movies, share us on all your social medias. Leave us 5-star reviews. I promise there's a way to do that on every platform that we have. Yeah, we really love this, being able to talk about all things and cocktails, and we can't do it without your support. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So that wraps it up for episode 213. Thank you so much for joining us. Rest in peace, Val Kilmer, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
Movies.
Movies.
You're the one. And he's like, you're the one.
I thought you were going to say, I am the Lizard King.
I am the Lizard King. I don't even know what that means. Yeah. Someday when I'm retired, I'm gonna drop acid
You need to.
and he's gonna show up and be like, Michaela, you got this whole movie wrong. Let me
You did it
explain
wrong.
it to you. Sorry, Val. I love you though.